View from the Gutters, episode 112. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Nathan Edmondson's Black Widow Volumes 1 and 2, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 5647. View from the Gutters, episode 112. I'm Andrew Chard.
I'm Tobias Banchin.
I'm Kaylee Fleeman.
I'm Brant Gillihan Eddy.
And we're going to be talking about Black Widow this week.
Yes.
Did you have any announcements?
Yes.
Did we skip the announcements?
Sorry. I'm just trying to think if there were any announcements, and there aren't, but while we're on the subject, thank you to our Patreon episode sponsors, Brian May, Addison Appleby, and Tony Cortero. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys. And we will be having a Emerald City Comic-Con report that may have already come out by the time this comes out. Probably will have come out.
I thought the con report was coming out first.
Yeah, so the con report's already out, so you've listened to that. So now we're on back to the regular scheduled program.
Yes. We're recording this the Monday after Emerald City,
Yes.
so we are all spaced the hell out.
Yes.
I'm not.
Except for Brant. Brant is super fluffy tailed.
Because I didn't go, which I went. No, wait, I don't. Oh, well.
Sorry.
Yeah. Kids.
Yeah, what's that? Oh.
Although, I have to say that I did this afternoon listen to the last episode, the rousing debate about, well, not debate. I hate astronauts.
God hates astronauts.
God hates astronauts. Two very interesting observations that I feel like I have to talk about before we get into our book for today. First of all, there's a reason that Kaylee and I are on the show now more often than not, and it's because the four of you cannot be. You just need to be slapped around and controlled. The second thing is, so I tend to listen to the shows not twice, but what'll happen is the first time I listen to it, I'll kind of jump around because I don't know if I'll have a chance to listen to it all the way, and then I'll kind of go back and listen to it. When I jumped around, at 4 different times in the entire hour-long episode or whatever it was, you guys kept talking about that goddamn RoboCop scene over and over again.
That was
kind
all
of hilarious. No, Chard was going off about the audio effect thing. And
I was talking about it because I was looking at that page when he was talking about it, and it made me laugh because I realized that the next panel had the term bited as a sound effect.
Yeah, and then contempt or whatever.
Oh, yeah, and he laser beams someone, and it was like contempted or contempt.
Yeah, so I just thought it was really hilarious that every time I jumped around, it was like, and then RoboCop, blah, blah, blah. I was just like,
it's a good movie.
It's an hour-long discussion about that one scene.
Yeah,
in a comic.
So, those are my observations.
All right.
That was it?
Yep.
Good
Okay.
deal.
Cool.
So, Black Widow.
Yes. You pitched it,
I did. I'm not really quite sure where to start. I just really love the hell out of this book. And specifically, I think the thing that does it for me is Phil Noto's artwork, which is just so incredibly good. And I was really looking at it and trying to articulate in my head what it is that does it about it for me. And partially it's just the way that he draws things. Like, they feel very much of a time and a place. It's very evocative of that kind of like 60s and 70s action movie espionage kind of milieu. Mm-hmm. Part of it, I think, is just the expressiveness of the faces, the way that he draws them. But there's a lot of interesting choices. The way that the color from Natasha's hair kind of emanates like a halo off of her head. Mm-hmm. And the way that the colors kind of blend in, the people in with the scenery, as if there's not a strong line of distinction between them. And it's very masterfully laid out. It's very powerful to read it, and you really get sucked into the action. And it feels weirdly like this is a part of the Marvel universe that we don't get to see a whole lot. Mm-hmm. The unpowered part of it, where people are running around, and occasionally she runs into somebody like the Winter Soldier or Crossbones or whomever, and she's having to contend on a level as an ordinary person that superheroes don't generally have to contend on. There are things that are problems for her that is never going to be a problem for Captain America or Captain Marvel. And I really appreciate that. And this story has an awful lot of humanity to it.
Yeah. For a story about like a mercenary who kills people, there is a surprising amount of humanity. And you mentioned like the Winter Soldier and Crossbones, and she also meets up with the Punisher.
Right.
And with the exception of Daredevil, I think most of the people that she meets up with are kind of in the same camp as her. As they're like, they're sort of death dealers, right? Like they show up and they make shit quote unquote right, and that's considered a heroic action in the Marvel universe. But it depends. I mean, because there's times when Cap's like, Frank, you cool down. You're out of line. And there's moments where, the Winter Soldier, obviously having been brainwashed and whatnot, is acting in kind of an evil way. What I really like about this book is it's sort of exploring how Black Widow is kind of falling into a really gray area. Like, even with the best of intentions, shit's starting to go really wrong for her. And the scene where I first noticed that is, I think it's in issue 9, the Black Widow Punisher crossover.
Yes.
Where she's talking to, she's yelling at that guy on the helicopter. It's a helicopter. And she's beating him and asking him a question. She's like interrogating him. And
this is on the ship.
Oh, is it on the ship?
She's about,
yeah. And the Punisher's like, look, stop.
Like he doesn't
know anything. I've beaten enough people to death to know that guy doesn't know anything. And when the Punisher is the voice of reason in a scene, something's up. And I really like the scene with Daredevil as well, where he's like, "Yeah, you're not lying, but I'm concerned that you don't know the difference between right and wrong anymore." And this is like, and it's subtle because it's a subtle descent into sort of like this really gray, really dark region for the Black Widow. And after that first issue where she like starts to talk about home and the spider is building the spider web in her window and she has a cat now, you don't really expect that from this series. And that's what I really like about it is it's a great espionage book. And I think that Edmondson's just a fantastic writer of espionage and action in general. But I like the subtlety that exists there too, because this very easily could be just like a Jason Bourne biff pow bam explosions all the time.
Yeah, it's
chase scenes.
It's the humanity that really sells the book.
Yeah.
I really love the issue with X-23 in it, because he's like, I needed somebody angrier than me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's somebody who could soak up bullets and not die. That's also probably good.
Yeah. Which again is like it's a very superhero thing.
Yeah.
But it has so much more weight in this book.
How old is she?
What, X-23?
Yeah.
Well, she's a clone.
Right. No, I understand that, but how old is she supposed to be physically?
So
teenager, like 17 or 18?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how long you think Marvel time
right.
is. Because when she was first introduced in her miniseries, she was really young. She was like 9 because they accelerated her mutation. They like shock therapy accelerated her mutation so they could put bones in her, the adamantium on her bones earlier. Because mutants don't get their powers until like 15. And then when she joined the new X-Men, like she was a young member of that team at like 15. But then when she's on X-Force, like she seems like she's older.
And then she's in Avengers Academy or New Avengers? She's
in New X-Men, and then she has a solo series, and then she's in X-Force, and then she's in Avengers Arena.
Yeah, Arena, right.
And now she's in Wolverines. But I don't think they've ever distinctly said, but my idea is that she's somewhere between the ages of 15 and 22.
Yeah. Because it seemed like she was being presented more womanly.
Yeah.
In Phil Noto's rendering of her.
She does look more adult, and also she's in a casino.
Right.
Which,
in
although...
Macau, but still, I'm pretty sure you have to be 18.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I hate what they're wearing in that issue.
I love it.
I think they have the worst fashion sense in that issue. It drives me bonkers.
Well, it's this very, like, I don't know, kind of mid-70s look.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I really love it. I mean, it's ugly as hell, but I love it.
And also just like they know they're going to bust heads and just make a huge mess, and they wear white.
Well,
come on, guys.
It looks cool.
It does look cool, but it's
like
just
I'm imagining this as if it was a movie made in the 70s.
Yeah, I appreciate
like a Steve McQueen action film.
Yeah, I appreciate, I guess, that they're wearing pantsuits and not like super revealing costumes, but I do find the fashion, the cut of the pantsuit is not to my liking.
And then you get to see Laura just like splattered in blood,
which I think is a good visual effect. So
yeah, like it really works.
Yeah, that issue's really fun. I love this
flipping through the trade.
But Brant, I know that you and I share a love of espionage fiction, so I'm curious to hear what you thought of this series.
You want to hear my really tortured metaphor about this book?
Sure.
So I don't know if you guys have this experience, but there are stores like supermarkets or whatever that I love to go to in certain towns that I get to visit. You know, it's like the way I kind of felt about like something like Trader Joe's before Trader Joe's was in town, where it's like, oh, if I go there, I'm going to go and like buy all the stuff that I don't have access to. Mm-hmm. So this book for me is like going to a store like that, loading it up with all this amazing stuff that you love, but getting that one weird ass cart that isn't completely broken, but that one wheel on it wobbles and it kind of like drives you crazy because you can't ignore it. Not because it like ruins your experience, but you're just kind of like pushing it along, and then occasionally it just kind of starts going like wah, 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 and you're just like, what the fuck is that? I like this book. I actually I got my hands on all of it. Mm-hmm. I read everything. I read up to the current issue. Mm-hmm. Like I was enthralled. I love this book. And so on one hand, I'm kind of like, maybe these are only the things you notice when you actually really like something. But so there's a couple of things about the art. Noto's really great. Like I follow Noto on Tumblr. And he does that vintage other time period like style thing really well. Yeah. And he's got that kind of quasi photorealistic but not exactly realistic thing going with his art, which I think serves him incredibly well. Occasionally I felt like there was a few panels where it misstepped into that same territory, like when we were talking about Ravine. Yeah. Where it's like it looks almost too real and then it looks weird and you're like, what? But the one thing that he did that really impressed me more than anything else is when people put their hair up or take it down, it changes the shape of their face in these very like subtle but noticeable ways. And he did amazing with that. Like there's a couple scenes where Natasha pulls her hair up and it's like, it's the exact same face, but she looks distinctly different. I don't think a lot of artists are great at that. Like I feel like their face shapes look identical, whether their hair are up or down or whatever. And it's like, no, you're right. Like when somebody pulls their hair up, it makes their face look different, even if it has the same characteristics to it. I just thought it was really impressive. But the thing that kind of drove me nuts about the series, and the costume they put the Punisher in drove me nuts. Like talking about style things that didn't look right. He was in like a weird tan half.
He was wearing a flak jacket.
So
yeah, but like the way that it was laying out on him and like how he had the thing on it, it just looked strange to me. I didn't like the look.
He's wearing what he wore in the Punisher issue 9, which is the crossover. Because
I see.
So you don't have to read both, but Punisher issue 9 is the same story as Black Widow issue 9.
Interesting.
But what he did before they met up and after they met up.
Gotcha.
So it's like same kind of deal where it's like that middle section is the same, but
so
he was probably trying to ape the artist of Punisher currently on how he's drawing the Punisher as more of like a tack vest, military outfit, and it didn't seem to come off
there was just something about the lines in it.
I read the single issues, so I didn't see Punisher number 9 originally, and then when I reread it, I was looking through the trade, and that has Punisher number 9 in it. Yeah. And so I read it, and I was like, wow, that was kind of unnecessary.
Yeah, it's like it's not a crossover. Yeah. I mean, it's just interesting because it's a team up in both books, and they both happen to be the team up of the same event.
Right.
And it's really bizarre, but
I mean, it was interesting, but not super
necessary. It's not necessary.
But I'm sorry, Brant, you were driving at a point.
Oh, yeah. So the thing that bothers me about this book a little bit is, and I think it sometimes shows up on the street level books too, but this seemed really glaring to me, which is espionage for me works really well when there's a tension between kind of like what you can do and can't do in public, or also like, I mean, I certainly tend to enjoy kind of hard, what you would call it, harder espionage, where it's like more realistic. And then I also like, James Bond shows up with a laser watch and cuts through the diamond floor or whatever. But the thing is that this isn't just a world in which Black Widow is exceeding the limits of realism. She exists in a world where, like, at one point Tony Stark is like, I made this algorithm that can't be hacked, but somehow somebody did. And so, like, she's hurt her arm. And it's like, well, I gotta, like, walk around with a bummed arm. I'm like, you live in the Marvel fucking universe.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Like, literally, you do not. You're telling me that S.H.I.E.L.D. does not have a way to be like, here's some nanobots, doo-doop. Here's a little, like, infinity formula derivative, doo-doop. Like,
Here's some Wolverine blood.
yeah, like, just some weird thing where it's like, we are the most sophisticated espionage agency ever to be conceived in a universe with people who run around shooting lightning, and we can't make, like, we didn't put a GPS in our agent. She got kidnapped, and we don't know where she went, and not explain that. And we didn't, and like, there's certain things that, like, hurt her. And it's like, and this is the thing, is that I think Edmondson is very good at his craft, but, like, I think you almost have to think way even, like, and he does throw some things in there that are, like, nodding to the fact that there are these other people running around, but it's almost like, because he started to do that, I felt the absence of certain things really keenly.
Yeah.
Almost in the same way that, like, if you read certain kinds of, like, if you watch Star Wars, it doesn't matter that they go to light speed, but when you start reading more hard science fiction and it's like, and this is the real science, and then, something else shows up and you're like, but that doesn't, how does that, like, I'm not upset. I don't think the book is bad. I'm just kind of like I said, that wobbly wheel thing where I'm like, what the,
yeah,
what is up with that?
I mean, I can kind of see it insofar as a lot of the things that she's doing in this book are off the book's missions. She's not working for the Avengers. She's not working for S.H.I.E.L.D. She's on her own.
She's not actually working for S.H.I.E.L.D. for the vast majority of this series. She's doing something for Maria Hill. And the whole thing is that when she's hurt, she's working for Maria. Maria's like, yeah, I guess your arm's broken. Like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. I'm almost curious if he wanted to go further and they were like, you can't say that S.H.I.E.L.D. has that technology because we don't acknowledge that in the rest of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, or something.
And, like, you're not a big enough writer at Marvel yet to qualify, like, changing the way S.H.I.E.L.D. works.
Right.
But, yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, what I think you're right. What is interesting about espionage is seeing, like, the tensions between what is possible and what the public thinks is possible in some ways. And, like, it would be cool to see counter-espionage in a world where espionage has reached the heights that it has reached. You know, something interesting about Bond is, like, yes, Bond is a super spy, but he's super spying against, like, super villainous organizations like Spectre and Smersh. Like, that stuff it's not like that in the real world, really. And so... Yeah,
I thought... So, like, Crossbones showing up was, I felt like, a great nod to the fact that there's an entire mercenary world that exists. The lack of any... Like, here's the thing. Like, Wade brings this up in Daredevil, right? In the initial run when he took over, and Daredevil was still in Brooklyn, like, there's that whole plot where Daredevil has the super code or whatever on the disc.
The disc with, like, the Excel spreadsheet that explains every criminal organization's, like,
and
layout,
so who
where
responds to
all the money
that?
is.
Like, AIM and Hydra and a bunch of other groups. And so it's like, okay, these things take the place of, like, Spectre and Smersh in this world. And so then to be like, Black Widow's running around, it's like... But there's none of those other operatives. I mean, Chaos is meant to be that in a certain sense.
Yeah, and I like that because I like we know Hydra really well. We know AIM really well, and their complicated backstory and stuff. And I like that in the Bond movie that no one likes, Quantum of Solace. Quantum is the organization that's supposed to be the new replacement for Spectre. And it's like that. There's that scene at the beginning of Quantum of Solace where... They're like, we have operatives everywhere. And then the guy that's M's assistant pulls the gun out, and you're like, what? Because it's like, it's so secret that you didn't even, no one
that
knew
you don't
existed.
even know that somebody's there.
And I like Chaos for that aspect, but I want to know more about him, and I want to see them be at the level of someone like AIM and Hydra.
I get the feeling a little bit that this book was partially designed to appeal to people who have been watching the movies, unlike Black Widow. And so in that regard, it's like, we're going to kind of include these elements, but we're going to keep it kind of like this is her own little pocket dimension of the Marvel universe.
This is, I think, one of the other big squeaky wheel things for me is, I mean, some of it is a trope. Like, I think that Edmondson does this really great job, and Noto does fantastic in supporting him in it with, I think, like, the casino scene and what they're wearing of, like, being like, this is a standard spy trope. enjoy. Like, here is your cake. Enjoy your cake. So in some ways I can buy, it's like Nastasha Romanov is James Bond. She's this person who's literally walking into every room she goes into and be like, hello, I'm Nastasha Romanov. I'm Black Widow, yes? And you're like, how can you get away with telling everybody that? Yeah. And they kind of touch on it with the whole Anderson Cooper thing. But on the flip side, it's like, there's no way that you could... I mean, and she does a little bit of like I'm wearing a different wig, I've got a nice dress and glasses on, but it's like, you are one of the most prominent saviors of Earth. You've had more film put on you than like whatever. At least James Bond hasn't been videotaped by CNN, like, and so that just felt weird where it's like, I like the idea of her support network and this being this thing, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, you don't run around the streets of Shanghai shooting people and not have someone pull out a phone.
Well, for a long time, there was this kind of conceit in the Marvel universe that the average person like did not know that superheroes were real. Like, in a time before everybody had a camera on their cell phone, this was this kind of idea, like you'd have superheroes brawling it out on the streets of Manhattan, and there'd be some bystander going like, wow, they're filming that new sci-fi movie.
Right.
And there was kind of this idea is like the Avengers are off in space, or they're in like secret bunkers.
And that's why Peter Parker was so impressive, because he was able to get clear shots of Spider-Man where no one else could.
Right.
And they've done a good job of updating some of those sensibilities where it's like, well, you know, like the stories revolve around some of that stuff. So that's the thing is like, is this meant to be in some ways kind of anachronistic to another time where there isn't that sort of thing? Or
right. And I liked the Anderson Cooper issue because it was kind of playing this thing of like, yeah, we know that there's this woman named the Black Widow and that she's a member of the Avengers, but what do we actually know about her?
Right.
Like we've done all these interviews and we found out all this information that you, the public, do not know about this person, because you have only been presented with this one image of her.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's like, I feel like they're scratching that, but its absence was keenly felt for me.
Yeah, it exists in this very weird place, kind of in between a bunch of different aspects of the Marvel universe.
Right. And I think that's what I was trying to allude to earlier, is that it happens a little bit on the street level stuff, you know, with Iron Fist and Daredevil, but you can kind of wink and nod about like organized crime in New York. Like, clearly some of these people, like Spider-Man and Daredevil and, you know, the guys from Marvel Knights and stuff, like they get involved in that, but you almost have that sense that like organized crime is such a pervasive problem that, you know, like the event, like who do the Avengers attack when organized crime is happening? Like it exists on a level where it's like, it's not so big that you can just send in the Avengers, but it's not so small that you can only leave it to the cops. Like, that's why those street level heroes exist. Espionage exists at this level though, where it's like you have foreign entities and agents acting on the behalf of these things, and you're intentionally involving an organization like S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's like S.H.I.E.L.D. was able to basically come pretty damn close to aping the super soldier serum for Nick Fury. Like, Nick Fury Sr. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it does have ray guns. It does occasionally throw aircraft carrier size machines into the sky. So then, like, when the tropes of espionage show up, it just feels a little like if the owl doesn't get busted by Captain America, it makes sense to me, because I'm like, Captain America has better things to do with his time than go find the owl peddling heroin on the corner of Hell's Kitchen. When Romanov has some of the problems that she has, I'm just kind of like, that seems weird. Like,
do you think they're too big and that they're like Avenger level problems, or do you think that
well,
they're
it's just like, it's like in a world where you were like, oh, we had to detect Skrulls. Mm-hmm. Like, we had to, you know, Dr. Doom's constantly doing these things in Latveria. It's like, really? You don't have tasked image satellites made with Kree technology that can find Nastasha Romanoff because you were watching her the entire time?
I think there are some conceits in the Marvel Universe. I think there is definitely the conceit that, like, you know, in a world where you have an unbreakable metal, it's like, why is everything not made out of that? And it's like, well, because it's really expensive.
Well,
like,
sure,
real world economics still exist in the Marvel Universe.
It's hard to come
they've
by.
Never delved into that much.
Well, they talk about it with what's his name?
Reed?
No, in Iron Man, the other billionaire who's like building.
It's Obadiah's son, right? Are you talking about in the Five Nightmares?
Yeah. And leading up to
is it Ezekiel Stain?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think at one point he's like building like adamantium wind turbines or something. He's like, oh, we're going to use this technology to do the thing, and. I can't remember that story.
Well,
but so yeah, they sometimes kind of like
Charles has like an arrangement with the Shi'ar that like he won't use all their technology, he won't give away their technology, but he uses it for like the Blackbirds and Cerebro and stuff like that. And
right.
there's a lot of conceits with like what technology has Reed dug up from the Phantom
Sure.
Zone and like space, and why doesn't he share it with everyone?
Right. Well, and
Like,
it's
what's
implied,
he doing up there in that tower?
Well, and it's heavily implied, depending on whose Fantastic Four run you're reading, that he actually does patent and license that technology to make the world a better place, just like
Right.
Tony Stark supposedly does to some extent.
Yeah.
But even in canon, it's like even if you have those conceits, their Shield has Sword. I mean, Sword's still around as far as I know, or did it get evaporated?
It's
The Sword space station got blown up during Infinity
yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
when Thanos invaded.
But theoretically, they still have access to some of the things
like
that
there's-
Sword had.
They're still an organization.
Right.
Yeah, they're
and they, but that's what I'm saying, right? Like that entire, like the whole thing about Sword showing up and all of those people was like, yeah, we've got a space station, and we've got like phasers and stuff, and here's our transporter. Like, it's like you guys have access to this stuff, and they have fiddled with that with Shield, and so that's the only thing. Like
Yeah, I mean,
said.
there's any number of ways that you could kind of lampshade that. All this stuff is locked up in a top secret bunker 10 miles beneath the earth, because if we have it any less secure than that, some motherfucking Hydra agent is going to steal it, and it's going to end up on the black market, and then it's going to cause problems for everybody. So we just keep it all under lock and key, and we don't use the super arm healing nanobots unless we absolutely have to, because it's a big freaking deal for us. Like you can kind of
right, but at
extrapolate
the
out from
point
that.
you have an agent of Shield offing a guy in a secure facility, and the only person you can trust is Black Widow. Have you not reached the point of escalation where you probably need to break out the arm repairing robots because Shield has been compromised? Like it's like, I mean, it's not as dramatically shown in this comic as it was in Winter Soldier the movie, but it's basically the same concept. Like your entire like sophisticated multinational or whatever international espionage agency has been compromised. Supranational, has been infiltrated to the point where you've got agents offing people in your own facilities, and you didn't even know that the organization that could do that exists.
Yeah.
Break out the fucking nanobots, man.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm asking is like, do you think this is a problem big enough for the Avengers to call in? Is because like I think that's the balance that you have to walk. That's really difficult. Is like if you make in the Marvel universe if you make the threat too big, it's like, why didn't the Avengers show up? And if you make the threat too small, it's like
now they've approached this in the Marvel universe, but I'm about to say something that longtime View from the Gutters fans have probably not heard very often. DC, I think, has handled this concept a little bit more robustly.
I will agree that in the
past
Crisis era, DC had a great like hierarchy of like.
But it's that thing where it's like you can't,
is.
and they've touched on this in the Marvel universe too. It's like you can't send the Avengers in to deal with certain kinds of problems because it has the same appearances like the JLA acting on the behalf of a nation.
Right.
That it becomes the concern, which of course was great about the Crisis era, as China responds with, "Let's be honest, we all know that you're democratic puppets, so we're going to have our own JLA."
Right.
But even.
They have touched on some of this stuff in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, no,
China now
have.
has Spear.
Right.
That is their answer to S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right. And like I said, I'm not saying that Marvel's done completely.
No, not at all. You're definitely right. DC did have a period where they were handling this much, much better with organizations like Checkmate.
Well, you have Checkmate. You also have the Justice League. You have the Justice Society, which is like the training ground for Justice League members. Like, there's never been like an Avengers. Like, they tried with the Initiative, but they're in the Crisis era DC, if you're a kid superhero like Spider-Man, like there's a clear path for you to get to
There are
Justice
mentors
League.
available for
Yeah,
you.
you're like, you can go join the Outsiders, or you can join the Titans, and then move up from Teen Titans to like whatever, and then you go join the JSA and learn from the best, and then eventually maybe you'll make it to the big league. Like it's almost like a farm team system for baseball, right? Where like the Avengers, it's just kind of like, hey, you punch strong, you're in, kid. And like, actually, it's something I'm hoping for with this new Avengers team, A-Force, that they've announced. Have you guys heard about that?
Well, there's A-Force that is the all like women team. They've also announced the all new Avengers.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
It's basically like the B Squad.
Right. Female Thor, Captain America.
A new Iron Man, apparently, or people are speculating possibly a new Iron Man, a rebooted Vision, Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel,
Miles Morales,
and Kid Nova. Sam
He's
Alexander.
Not Kid Nova. He's Nova.
He's Kid Nova.
He just happens to be a kid.
His name is Nova.
Richard Rider will always be my Nova.
Yeah, well, there were like 1,000 Novas, so...
Well, for a long time, there was just one. Or, well, a long time, a few years.
For like...
During the time that there was a
let's be
series
honest.
in recent years called Nova.
Leading up to the creation of the Nova Force, as far as we were concerned, there was one Nova.
Yeah.
And then they all got offed, and then there was one Nova. So most of his character lifespan that we ever care about, there was one Nova. And then now he's been replaced with this kid.
Who's awesome.
Yeah, he may be awesome, but it's still like kind of asking me to not accept that Wally West is my Flash.
Yeah.
Or Kyle Rayner is my Green Lantern.
I think it's more like asking you to accept that Wally West is now the Flash because Barry Allen's dead.
Yeah, that's true. That might be true.
Because it's not like this kid existed in the Golden Age.
No,
and
that's
we're all
true.
like, who the fuck is this guy? And we never read this kid growing up.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm just too incredibly butthurt about Richard Rider and the way that he was just there like, okay, they're all like, these three characters are all dead in another universe. Except two of them are back within like 3 months.
Yeah.
But not this guy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm just upset about
You never know.
Well, I don't...
Well,
With
Boiling in the bowels of Rick Remender's mind is the escape from the microverse story.
At Emerald City at the Marvel panel, they were somebody asked about Richard Rider and they're like, "Oh, ask so and so." Like he's got a plan or whatever. And it was, I can't remember which writer it was, but something is going to be involving Richard Rider in Secret Wars.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, with Secret Wars, it just, like, busts everything wide open. It's basically, like, all the characters play with like, you get all the toys back, which is something I'm kind of excited about because we get to see all the toys back again.
Totally.
Do you miss the Scott Lobdell run of Alpha Flight? Well, they're back.
Yeah.
I actually do kind of miss it. It was actually a fun book.
I think that
it was a fun book. He was clearly being.
Was that the one where it was like Beta Flight and their memories were being erased? And
no, that's the one where it's kind of like it was kind of not Beta Flight, but it was only like 2 or 3 of the original Alpha Flight, and it turns out that Guardian's actually a robot, and like they couldn't find Puck, and so it's like Captain Canadian, and like all those.
think I read that one and was kind of upset by it.
Yeah, it was kind of tongue in cheek.
It's
very
been a while.
Deadpool-y.
I might be thinking of a different one. Yeah. Anyway, we've gotten kind of down a rat hole, and somebody has not said anything yet.
No, I haven't. I sure haven't. You guys
Kaylee
won't shut up.
What do you think of Black Widow? So
I'm gonna go down my list in a downward pyramid style.
Okay.
I think that there, in the writing, it would have been really easy to turn Nastasha Romanov into this brooding character who isn't relatable, who is just like the Miss Man version of every single like white brooding male character we've ever seen, who has a chip on his shoulder, you know,
like the Punisher.
Yeah, like the Punisher, or Daredevil for a little while, or just anyone, honestly.
Sad kid of the year.
Yeah, and they didn't. And Natasha, like, she has a lot of issues in connecting with people. She wants to keep her distance. She has to keep her distance, but you can see that it hurts her in a lot of ways, which is a sort of vulnerability that you don't see in other characters. And she's relatable. She doesn't connect with people, but you as a reader can relate to her in a lot of ways. Like, she's funny. When you're reading her personal narration, she's hilarious. Like, she just kind of has this inner banter going on that is, it's funny and it's relatable, and it makes you want to know the character more, and you can see that she's a very lonely person. And I think that's really cool. Mm-hmm. It gives a very unique twist to that very standard trope that is very easy to fall into, and I'm so glad that they just stayed away from it, or stayed away from falling all the way into it.
Yeah, like the brooding stuff is there, but it's more subtle. And
yeah,
it's there because I say that it's subtle because it's not explicitly told to you. Like something that a less skilled writer, I think, would have done in showing her descent kind of into this like it's not madness, but this like gray area, is have the character tell you that they're upset.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
But Natasha like almost doesn't notice that this is happening to her.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so compelling, because you're like, no, don't do that. Like, don't you see what you're doing? Like, you're worried for her well-being. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of that comes from how clever the narration is.
Yeah.
It's very, very tactfully done. And I know it's after what we read for the show, but in some of the later issues, because it's up to issue 16 at the time we're recording this.
Yeah.
There is a flashback issue going to her childhood, like being raised in the Red Room. And you really feel for her, and you start to recognize all the ways that she is very profoundly damaged as a person. And it's not that very blunt, like, haha, I'm so crazy, look at how fucked up I am, I'm such a terrible person and I'm going to do bad things. Kind of like the way that Harley Quinn is written in her least well done incarnations.
Yeah.
Like, this is very tactfully and very subtly done. Mm-hmm. And it's easy to miss because it's so subtle. Like, the things that he's doing to express the damage that Natasha has experienced.
Yeah.
Like, it really, really works because it's very soft.
Yeah, it's so subtle, in fact, that there's whole issues about stuff that he never really, like, touches on what he's trying to imply in the issue. Specifically, the Winter Soldier issue. Because, I'm trying not to mess this up, because I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. But if my memory serves, Natasha and Bucky had a thing for a while.
Yes.
And now Natasha doesn't remember a good chunk of her life. And so now she doesn't remember that they ever knew each other, really. So in that issue, there's a lot of tension where, like, he remembers stuff, but she doesn't. And there's just, like, a lot of moments where, like, he's going to tell her stuff, and she's like, what? And he's like, never mind. And if you, like, haven't read any of that stuff, you wouldn't pick up on it. But what's cool is if you didn't read any of that stuff, it doesn't bog the story down.
Yeah.
Because it's just, like, it's still a cool story, regardless of whether you know the past between those characters.
Yeah.
Because I think Bucky trained Natasha. I think that's canon, or, like, trained her in some ways. I think that's somewhere.
I know that they worked together because he was he was working brainwashed for the Soviets as the Winter Soldier. Like, that's how he became what he is.
Right.
And she was also a KGB agent.
Right.
Like, she was actually born, I think, back in, like, the 20s or the 30s. And has had her life extended with a knockoff super soldier serum.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they were...
And the sliding timeline.
Yeah. So they were working together back in the actual, like, in canon 20th century.
Right.
Because they're both significantly older than they look.
Yeah, and I think that he, like, either trained her or was her, like, mentor in some aspect. But, yeah, there's definitely stuff in here that he kind of, like, pokes at in Marvel history, but doesn't fully, like, delve into. And I like that kind of subtle...
Well, and I like it, too, because you see... And this is one of my favorite scenes in the comic, where Clint falls out of a window and gets hit by a car. And then you see this expression on Natasha's face of just, like, annoyance. And there's Clint in the background whistling off, because that's just what he's used to. But I like these scenes between her and Bucky and her and Clint and just everybody else that comes in, because... whether or not she wants to, she's emotionally invested in these people.
Yeah.
And to her, that's frustrating, and that's something that she doesn't want and that she shuts out. And everybody else knows it, and they love her anyway. And just accept that that's just who she is. She's a damaged person. She needs support, but she'll never ask for it.
And when she does ask, they always say yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool, because you don't see the exchange between Laura and Natasha as, like, how that team up happened, but you can kind of imagine it that X-23 was just like, yeah, whatever you need.
Yeah. How else? Oh, I thought it was cool. So in the opening, where she starts making up this story of how she killed her parents when she was really young, You're like, okay, that probably happened. And she was the wife of this drug lord, and you're like, that could have happened. And then she keeps going on, and you're like, I don't know if that's what happened. And then it's sort of after the end of this, and this is like the intro to the character, and it's delivered in a way that traditionally in comics, authors will kind of lazily throw in, just as, oh, she's introducing herself to another character, and you, the reader, just happen to be reading this, like, totally natural conversation,
It reminds me of that scene in Community where he, like, starts... Abed's telling a story about something on the radio, and the radio's just playing music, and they, like, cut away from the flashback, and he'd be like, it'd be weird if the news story started the minute that they turned the radio on. Obviously, there's going to be some music before it, and then it goes back to, like, the flash. Away.
But then, after all that happens... The guy's saying, "Oh, we'll find you. You've told me your backstory. I'll find you." I lied. And as the reader, you're like, I knew it. But you also know a lot more about her as a character than I think you would have if there was a traditional introduction sequence like that. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the story that she would construct, and she has the sort of mind that would construct this story. And there are a lot of personal details I feel like she throws into that story, but you don't know which ones are true. So she could have killed her parents when she was really young, but you're not sure. She could have been really torn apart by the way that she had to live as a child, but you're not really sure. Mm-hmm. So she uses truth and lie in a way that is... It's just really cool. It's just really cool how it's woven together in a way that you as the reader get to experience her as a character without knowing her backstory, but you really get to have a solid sense of who she is as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that first issue is like a masterful issue 1. Because it's such a tough sell, the first issue in a story. And I read these in singles for Top of the Stack, and I remember reading that first issue and going, this is going to be awesome. Like, this series is going to be good. And it's not very often that I can definitively say, after the first issue, whether a writer knows what they're doing or not. But this is one of those cases. And I think that character introduction is awesome. I think that the, like... metaphor of the home, it's like a visual metaphor of the home and the spider's web that he uses in that first issue is really strong too. And over the next couple issues, the web gets bigger. And I was like, that's so clever in that like very beginning, just to kind of lead you in.
Well, and the cat too.
Yeah.
The cat which I loved, because it's very much so the relationship I have with my cat.
The cat adopts her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me too. So
I didn't want the cat that I have.
Yeah,
I told the guy I was with at the time, like, I don't want a fucking cat. And now I have her. And we aren't together anymore. She's my baby. But lose
the guy, keep the cat. Always a win.
Yeah, best case scenario.
Yeah, our cat adopted us as well, so it was like,
Yeah,
I had a cat do that once.
Yeah.
It's just it's a cool little story. And there are a lot of really cool things that go on with the cat that you wouldn't think that somebody could just use as like, oh, she has a cat now. And you're like, oh, okay, that's it. That's cool. But there are a lot of visual things that go on with the cat and a lot of little side things that go on with the cat that are really important to the story as clues and metaphor. Like letting people in and taking them into her heart, or the cat into her home, and then how the cat is like really whiny and frustrated until the person feeds, or her attorney feeds him, and it's just like, oh, you're just like your mom, like you'll never admit that you need help, but you do. And then later, after the attorney is shot in the home, when Natasha is walking into her home, you can see bloody footprints leaving the house, or bloody paw prints from the cat, because the cat ran away. And I think that there's a lot of really cool visual cues that go on in that. And I really like this as a lot of just subtle writing. It wasn't overtly heavy-handed, and nothing stands out as, oh, look at me, I'm so dark, I'm so broody. It's good.
Yeah. I feel like this is a series that is not getting the attention that's due to it.
Yeah.
Although I did the opposite of what you did, Shard. I kind of ignored it for a long time because I'm like, oh, Black Widow, don't care. And people just kept saying good things about it. And so I checked it out, and I was glad that I kind of waited, because then I got to absorb it all in one big lump, which I actually really loved. Like, really being able to dig into the series and read it like over the course of like a day or 2 days.
Yeah, I much prefer reading stuff like that. But
well, there are differences. Like, we were talking about God Hates Astronauts last week, and I think that is a series that definitely deserves to be read one issue a month, because more than that is just, you get overloaded.
Well, and I like being able to take breaks from stuff, especially like that. Right. Books like Watchmen that are really dense. Like, I couldn't read Watchmen in one sitting. You know, that kind of stuff I definitely will enjoy. But I do like reading more than one issue at a time, usually. I just think that like 22 or 20 pages is just not enough sometimes.
Yeah, so. I definitely agree. But there are some series that merit being spaced out, and there's some that really need to be absorbed in one chunk. I think a lot of Jonathan Hickman's writing, like, you get so much more out of it reading 10 or 20 issues at a time. And this is definitely a series that rewards reading it all in one chunk, because you get so into it. Man, I love it so much.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about the art, about Phil Noto's art. Phil Noto is also the inker and colorist for this series. He does the whole kit and caboodle on this one. Which is
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really interesting to note for the fact that sometimes I talk a lot about modern art and what makes like modern comic book art look so modern, as opposed to like, you look at something, you're like, oh my God, it's so 90s looking. Something that a lot of people don't notice when you talk about 90s art, it's not so much the color technology or the way the paper is printed or anything like that. It's the way inking functions as a comic art form. And inking used to be there to make the pencils dark enough to scan on the scanner, so that then it also provided a barrier between the color in the like 4-color printing process way back in the day, and it's just a holdover basically since then, because there's not really a better way to do that. With the advent of digital technology, something that you can do is, as the artist, Phil Noto, has drawn or penciled or laid out the book in some format, when he goes to do the finishes on the art in digital, he doesn't have to use black ink for inking. And only one issue in this whole book uses black inking. The rest of it's all, well, you would call like color holds on the lines, where the lines themselves are colored. And it makes everything look so different, because instead of having black shadows, you have color shadows. There's a great scene, I don't remember what issue it's in, but she's sitting in a lobby, and you can see the light on the floor. You can see the windows on the floor. And the ability for him to use, like, he just cut out some squares, you know, he just drew out some squares, and then instead of having a black line around them like they would in normal comics to denote that there's light there, it's just the color is different in that panel, in that square. And I think it's something that's easy to miss in this book, is how masterfully done the color is. Yeah. Because it not having that black inking makes the book look so much more modern, just thousands of times more modern, because you're not drawing highlights onto their face or blacking out half their face with shadows. You can go in and fill in how light actually looks. And that's what makes it look more photorealistic, kind of what we're talking about. So the next 45 minutes I'd like to devote to talking about Phil Noto's colors on this one. But it could go long, so some of it might get cut out. But, you know, if you aren't interested in hearing about color, you can just skip ahead to the recommendations. So
I do actually, because I'm super into makeup. And I wanted to point out the makeup in this. Normally in comics, and this is a huge pet peeve of mine, and people, especially guys, often overlook it, when a character wakes up, and even in a scene where she is putting on makeup, she already looks like she has makeup on. Like, she looks like at least the eyeliner is done.
Yeah.
And maybe she's putting on lipstick or something. Natasha looks like she just woke up. And I love it. In any scene where she's putting on makeup, she will put mascara on one eye and the other eyelashes are very clearly like a very light blonde color and they haven't had mascara put on them yet. Or her lips will be a lot lighter because she hasn't put anything on them yet. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool. Like,
yeah.
It's just really cool to, as somebody who's super into makeup and who wakes up in the morning going like, ugh, to see another character in a comic have that same sort of appearance of, yeah, I woke up.
Yeah.
I haven't done anything yet. I just got out of the shower. So
such an attention to detail.
Well, and it's the beauty of being your own colorist too, is like knowing that, I can do this later with color.
Yeah.
Like I can really affect this scene later.
Well, and I think it's a part of the not having like solid black lines. Because if you have solid black lines, it looks like characters are wearing eyeliner or their lips are darker or whatever. But when you have the color holds, you get to make people look like people.
Yeah.
Because in real life, we don't have black lines.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
Speak for yourself.
I have looked at your face a lot. You don't have black lines. You have glasses.
I have an outline.
When you turn on the comic book filter in like a Photoshop program or whatever, and it just like draws like thick black lines around everything.
Yeah.
It's like that's not how stuff really looks. So it's cool to see a book where that much attention to detail is taken too. And Edmondson writes really cool scripts. You can go read like how he lays out panels and stuff. Some of his scripts are online, and he's got that kind of attention to detail as well.
Cool.
But it seems like a really fun collaboration because they definitely play with like how much they can show versus how much they have to tell. And I like that. So anybody have anything else before we move on to
just if you have not read Black Widow for whatever reason, do yourself a favor, please go check it out.
Yeah.
Because it is really that good.
Yeah.
I think it is probably the number one book at Marvel that not enough people are reading.
Yeah, it's
like underappreciated gem.
Yeah. And it's still an ongoing. A lot of what I would call underrated gems at Marvel right now have just ended or are just ending. So it's like, yeah, it's definitely up there for me of books.
Hawkeye's ending, right?
It is switching creative teams. They have actually put out the first issue of the new creative team, even though the last issue of the Fraction run has yet to come out.
Yeah. So, yeah, Lemire's Hawkeye started a month ago. Fraction's Hawkeye will end at some point, but it only has one issue left. So it's basically, it took 3 months for the last issue to come out after the one previous. So it's just kind of like eking out slowly.
Do you know if they're staying sort of with the same Clint Barton that has been set up?
Yes, it's awesome. Read the first issue, you'll love it. Because it's a framing device. It's like him and Kate on a mission, and it's hilarious and awesome. And then the flashback is him and Barney as kids. And it's like...
And the two, and like the modern day stuff and the flashback stuff have two radically different art styles that are going on. And it gives the book a really interesting flair.
Yeah, and I think if you liked the Fraction Hawkeye, you will like the new stuff.
Okay,
it's
cool.
not that much different that you'll be like, who's this new Hawkeye stuff? Like, it's in that vein.
Right.
Fraction's Hawkeye is now like pervasive in the Marvel universe. Like, that's how they write and draw and think about Hawkeye, which I think is good. Like, he reinvented that character in a lot of ways. So
yeah, it's really interesting when you have that one run that really radically redefines the way that a character is written and thought about. And Fraction's run was definitely one. Like, it has redefined who Hawkeye is. If you look at stuff from 5 years ago, like, he feels like a very different character.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is he still deaf?
So he was deaf a while ago.
Well, yeah, and I know.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
For the new run.
In Fraction's run, he received another injury, which deafened him temporarily.
Right.
He now has using like shield technology.
In the first issue of the Lemire run,
Shield has technology to heal his ear.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, it's called a hearing aid.
Yeah,
but not Natasha Romanov's arm.
Yeah,
I see how it is.
Well, you don't have
just
a broken
minor
arm
tech.
aid. You have hearing aid, so there you go.
that's a minor tech. Yeah, I don't know. He has some kind of like Avengers. Tony Stark builds him a thing.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the
His
explanation is.
arc ear.
Yeah, but it's like some science-y thing that helps him hear. But he's still deaf, but he like has artificial hearing aid.
Yes.
But yeah, it's really fun. I actually really like the first issue a lot. So yeah,
cool.
but no, I was talking about Ghost Rider. All new Ghost Rider just ended. She-Hulk just ended. And we only have 1 or 2 issues left in the Immortal Iron Fist, which is Iron Fist, the Living Weapon.
Thought that had wrapped up.
Iron Fist?
Yeah.
No, it's 12 issues. Issue 10 just came out.
Are they scrapping the new Ghost Rider, or is he just showing
No,
up?
it just says not the end at the end of the last issue.
That's good.
So they're just
I've heard
doing,
he's a good character.
He's fantastic. They're doing 12 issue minis. It seems like with characters that they aren't super sure about.
That's perfect.
Because Miss Marvel, or sorry, not Miss Marvel, She-Hulk. Everyone was like, "It's getting canceled," and he was like, "No, I was only ever given 12 issues. Like this is all I had." And same with Felipe Smith, who did All New Ghost Rider. They were like, it was 12 issues. That's what we got.
Apparently, Ms. Marvel was originally like that.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no, dear God, keep going.
And I think Black Widow, that may have happened to as well. But
it's on issue 16,
yeah,
so
but
it's still happening.
It didn't feel like it was done after 12. So
no.
I mean,
issue 12 is the Anderson Cooper issue. Yeah. Like, that is by no means an ending.
Yeah. So, I don't know. But it seems like Marvel's trying like little minis.
But I believe Axel Alonso or someone high up at Marvel came out and said, like, Robbie Reyes as Ghost Rider is not done. Like,
no.
He is still the Ghost Rider character that we're going to be supporting. Mm-hmm. This particular series is ending.
Yeah. And I'm really sad because I love Felipe's writing on that book. And he did the art. The writer also did the art on the last 2 issues, and it's really good. So I wish he had done more art on that series, but
I'll have to check that out.
It's fun as well.
Like, I know you really love Tradmore. I'm not a super fan of his work. Like,
I do.
It's just it's good. It's just not my style.
I do love Tradmore, and I think it's the week of this recording. Next week is the first issue of the last volume of Luther Strode comes out.
Ooh,
I'm so fucking pumped. But yeah, so recommendations. Brant, what have you brought for us this week?
I decided to go for something light in tone. I'm pitching Geffen and DeMatteis?
Yeah.
Formerly known as Justice League, and its follow-up companion, Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League, which features the Super Buddies, which are basically the cast-offs of the old JLI from the 80s, trying to form a new super team, and hilarity ensues. I don't know. It's kind of, for me, it was one of my first exposures to some of the B-team characters of the DC universe. I hadn't really been familiar with their run on JLI before this, although I did go back and read a lot of it, which makes that series, the ones I'm pitching, even more funny, because they riff on a lot of stuff from before. But it's just kind of a fun, like, what happens to people who were kind of on the Justice League, but not really the big 7 or the other major power players, and when they try to basically become more DC's equivalent of Heroes for Hire, it doesn't really go well. And it holds a special place in my heart now because it's the last, like, really positive representation of Maxwell Lord before he became, like, King Douchebag of the DC universe. And I had kind of forgotten about the series. It was been collecting dust, and then I've been watching Young Justice again for some reason, and there's basically an episode that's sort of a amalgamation of some of the plot points from formerly known as Justice League, when Mongol comes and has a tournament with the Young Justice Leaguers inside the Hall of Justice. It is kind of a reference to the plot of formerly known as Justice League.
Interesting.
So it's hilarious. At least I think so. The art's fun.
And that was the JLI was the Justice League right after Justice League Detroit.
Right.
So,
which had Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, Martian Manhunter, Guy Gardner,
Batman,
Fire and Ice,
Maxwell Lord,
and Sue Dibney were Elongated Man.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that sounds like
they were like some people that kind of like floated.
Yeah,
now,
I think
right?
Red Tornado,
Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Wasn't he there?
Yeah.
Later.
Well, yeah. So,
and
like, in the main
Jade.
run back in the day, so then you also had Crimson Fox.
Isn't Jade's there, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Right? I don't remember.
Maybe.
It's been a while since I read it, but there's like 4 volumes.
Tasmanian Devil.
There's 4 trade paperbacks, I think, or maybe there's 5 that you can go get that are the JLI. And it's all collected, and it's really funny. So check it out.
Yep.
And these ones were done in the
2003 and then 2005, I think.
So like basically 10 years later. Yeah. Cool.
I'm doing a thing that I have not done on the show yet, which is pitching a book I have not yet read.
Yay!
Yeah,
our favorite.
Discouraged.
Well, I was gonna read it today, and then I was sick and just slept on the couch. So there's that. It's Wayward by Jim Zub. I have heard great things about this book. I've had a chance to flip through it, and the art is absolutely gorgeous. It follows a girl who moves to Japan to, I believe, reunite with her mother.
Yeah.
And she's sort of hoping that this will be a clean start, whatnot, typical moving away to a foreign country story. But she has special powers, and all these weird creatures sort of from the dark and from the underworld or whatever start creeping up into real life, and she has to battle them with her special powers. And everybody I've talked to said that this is a fantastic book, so I'm really excited to talk about it and to read it.
Yeah, she's half Irish, half Japanese. So she lived in Ireland with her father, leaves Ireland to move to Japan, and hijinks ensues. It's adorable.
I love hijinks.
The art's amazing, and for someone who's traveled to Japan, it was just like nostalgia city, and it's fantastic. This is a great image book. So the first trade's $10.
And there are cats.
There are
all
cats.
over the place.
Yep.
So that's a huge selling point.
And there was a amazing hardcover of this, Emerald City Comic-Con exclusive hardcover. I think it's just a Comic-Con exclusive hardcover, but it's because I think it'll be at other cons. But it's this really nice, beautiful 1-volume hardcover of this. So
very cool.
That Image does for cons. So awesome. Check it out.
Awesome. So I'm going to pitch a book that I've pitched twice before, but this time I have the advantage of actually having the book with me to show off, which hopefully will motivate you people.
What do you mean you people?
I mean you people.
Wow, rude.
I'm pitching Rice Boy by Evan Dom, and if you listen to the Emerald City Comic-Con report that we put out, I just picked this book up at the con this weekend, and I'm super excited to read it again. I just started it today. And what this is it's kind of this weird psychedelic fantasy tale about, it starts out with these two guys, the one Electronic and Calabash, who are 3,000 years old, and they have been given immortality by God so that they can find the fulfiller of this prophecy. And as long as they keep searching for the fulfiller, they will continue to live. And over the past 3,000 years, they've named fulfiller after fulfiller that have all failed to fulfill the prophecy, and things have gone terribly bad in the past. The most recent guy that they named, who is this frog named Spatch, turned into basically like a religious zealot, founding a cult of personality around himself and going out and crusading. And he just utterly failed to fulfill the prophecy, and he has just died. And the series opens with the one Electronic finding Calabash and going, we have to go find the next person to be the fulfiller. And Calabash is like, I'm done. One Electronic says, okay, fine, I'll go do it by myself. He goes and talks to this guy named Rice Boy. Says, I think you're the one. Rice Boy says, no, I'm too unimportant. I can't do it. One Electronic leaves disappointed, goes back, finds that Calabash has died because he stopped looking for the fulfiller. And then Rice Boy decides, like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to go talk to this guy you said I should talk to just to see what happens. And so he sets off on an adventure on his own. And the book is super colorful. It's got a lot of really awesome designs that are just beautiful as heck. It's a gorgeous story to read. And you can check out the entire thing for free on rice-boy.com. And it's a great webcomic. The whole thing has been completed. Evan Dom has started and finished another story, and then started and is not yet completed a third story, all set in this same universe of Overside. And this is the first one that kind of started everything off.
Sweet.
And it's a really beautiful story. I super love it. It's one of my favorite webcomics ever, and I highly suggest that everybody check it out.
Sweet.
And hopefully we'll get to talk about it on the podcast one day. Maybe tomorrow. Well, next week.
Next week. I'm busy tomorrow. Top of the stack.
Not important enough.
So I brought a image book as usual, and this,
what week is it?
I believe 35.
That sounds about right.
35 or 36.
Okay.
I don't think I said on the last episode, which is probably why I can't remember. But this came out a couple weeks ago, and I saw it again at Comic-Con, and they had an exclusive con variant of this as well. Something the Image does is they'll do like con hardcovers, which are really beautiful, and they're like $30 though, so it's a big step up from that $10 initial price point to the $30 one volume hardcover, especially since later you'll get like the $35 two volume hardcovers, and it's like it's kind of a high price point, but they are beautiful to look at, and if you have the money, I guess, and you're a big fan, go for it. But Toby's distracting me with pages from Rice Boy, but I will not be distracted because this book is fantastic and the art is absolutely unreal. I started reading it because of the art 100%, but I do love the story. It's called Low, Volume 1, The Delirium of Hope.
I need to stop gasping at things.
Yeah, and that's the trade paperback. It is written by Rick Remender, and it is drawn by Greg Ticini. And if you may recognize that team, they were the team on the book The Last Days of American Crime, which was a book that they did together, which was fantastic. This, however, is a sci-fi story. That actually was kind of a sci-fi story too, but this is like a super sci-fi story. It's set in the far distant future, and the sun has gotten more sunlight.
It's gone all like supernova.
Yeah, it's bigger and hotter and more of a sun.
Yeah,
it's more. It did the thing.
Well, this is a thing that will actually happen.
Yeah.
In another,
well, there's isn't there two possibilities? Like one, it'll implode on itself.
Well,
and
like
we'll
even
freeze to death.
Like even before that happens, basically the sun isn't just gonna like blow up all at once. Like scientists have determined in some like 100,000 years or something like that, the sun will have increased in size a appreciable amount, such that the surface of the Earth will be too hot for us to live on.
Right, and so they have humanity has descended into the deep, 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 deep ocean, and they live in these like
dome cities.
Well, they're these underwater cities, and there's not very many humans left. And this is basically the sun is about to blow up, like about to just all out explode. And so society's been sending these probes out into space to try to find places to move to, and we haven't found anywhere that's close enough that we'll get to. And so basically humanity's given up on everything, and they're like, it's just kind of, it's done, we're done. And so some parts of society are just out pirating the ocean and just kind of like wrecking everything. The last remnants of quote unquote civilization have reverted to this very like hedonistic orgy, eating everything, tons of drug use. But there is a small faction of people, scientists, who still believe that there is a way out. And so they're still waiting and checking on the probes every day. And this follows the family of one story. And in an interview, Remender talks about the fact that he wrote a character archetype he had never written before in this book, and it was a fun thing for him to do because he's never written a story with the eternal optimist, with someone that's always like, things will get better, always. And so that's the main character of the story, is kind of the last holdout for, we're going to make it, we'll get out of here. And a lot of horrible stuff has happened to that family and will continue to happen to that family throughout the series, but it's kind of that this is the last shot for humanity as they try to escape from the deep ocean and head for the stars. And it's really good. The first book is like five issues, I think. It might be 6, but it's very action-packed, very...
I want to say it's 6 because I'm pretty sure issue 7 just came out.
Yeah, I think it's 6 in the first issue. And it's a really good first arc. Like, it feels like It's not the kind of trade where it's like, and the first issue, and then issue 7 is just like basically like feels like it could have been issue 6, or like it's one continuous story over multiple
lot of
trades.
stuff happens.
Yeah, like this is like feels like arcs. So, yeah, I really love this series, and everyone should go check it out. Ticini's art is fucking unreal. It's like nothing you've ever seen in comics before, and I mean it. So,
Cool.
It's good. Check it out. But Brant, what would you like to read this week?
Wander.
Wayward.
Wayward?
Wayward. Yeah, that's
Wayward.
It starts with a W.
Something.
Haley.
I'm gonna go with low.
God, it's rare that I'm honestly torn between all of the books.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm honestly struggling to decide what I want to read.
Good books this week.
Do you want to vote, Chart, and I'll tie break?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna vote for Wayward.
Okay.
Tie breaking for you.
Yeah. Then I will vote
Unless
for.
no, I guess you could force a tie. We have a new system in place.
Well, that only applies if we have an odd number of people, because there's no way to break a 2-way tie if it's 2 and 2. So, I'm going to vote for formerly known as the Justice League, and we will read Wayward, Volume 1
Sweet.
for next
Yes.
week.
Yeah, I'm pumped. This book's good. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you to our Patreon episode sponsors once again, and all of our Patreon sponsors, like every week. And we'll catch you guys all next time.
And thank you guys for listening.
Yes.
Bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to View from the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.